Hey, Dia de los Muertos is coming, and sometimes we just need to make sure our students understand that it is not Spanish Halloween. But maybe you don't have a ton of time to devote to this in your curriculum, so I wanted to share an easy one-day lesson plan you can use to teach your students about Day of the Dead. Let's get right into it. Hi, my name is Ashley, aka Señorita Spanish, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. If you haven't been here before, make sure you click that subscribe button and ring that bell so you get notified of all new content that I create for you in the future. Also, links to everything that I mentioned will be in the description box below, so that way you can find what you need. Let's chat about a one-day lesson you can use to teach your students about Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. This virtual field trip activity is something that I've used with students in 6th through 12th grades, exploratory classes, so 6th and 7th grade exploratory classes, and Spanish 1 and 2 students in high school, so those would be 8th through 12th grade students. And I also use this in 45 to 50-ish minute class periods, so if that sounds like you or your setting, keep watching because this will be a perfect fit. I want to share the flow of the lesson, how to set it up, and some tips to help you be successful. So first, setup. Anytime you use technology in a lesson, you should always check to make sure your students have access to it and your school isn't blocking stuff. So when I do a virtual field trip, I use Google My Maps and YouTube to provide the information to students. So you're just going to want to check with your tech person and make sure those things aren't blocked. And I personally would recommend grabbing a student device and opening it up on there first, because sometimes I've checked on my own teacher computer and the school has given teachers access to that, but then you go to give it to your students and your students are like, profe, it is not working, and you're like, ah. So just to avoid that stress, check it on a student device so you know for sure they have access to it. Next, if you are going to use the printed handouts to guide your students through the map, you're going to want to make copies of that, whether you're choosing the graphic organizer or the comprehension questions or both, and you're printing them back to back. If you're choosing to use the digital version of the comprehension questions and graphic organizer, you're just going to post that in your school's LMS. Easy, no copies. Okay, so you've checked the tech, you've made copies or you've shared copies, and that means you're all set. So let's talk about the class period itself. Whenever I do a virtual field trip with my students, I like to start class like normal. And what does normal look like? For me, that looks like a start of class and then a daily routine. I do have a blog post where I detail the start of class routine and the daily routines that I like to use with my students. I will make sure to link to that in the description of this video. Hey, have you ever done a virtual field trip before? If yes, comment below yes, so I know you've tried one. After the daily routines, I give students the link to the map. Whether I write it on the whiteboard or if I send it out to them through the LMS, I just give students the map and some time to explore. And the reason why I like to give them the map first and just kind of set them loose is because if I give them the map and the questions, they tend to just focus on retrieving the information rather than exploring. And the exploring part of the virtual field trip is something that is really enjoyable for them, so I don't want to take that away. After 5 to 10 minutes of exploring the map, I will pass out the graphic organizer and or questions, depending on what I've chosen based on this group of students. This is when they start to retrieve the information from the map to fill out the organizer or to respond to the questions. And I personally prefer to do a printed version of the questions rather than using the digital one. I will use the digital one for absent students, but I prefer to use the printed one while they're in class with me because I think it's a lot more manageable for students to look and write rather than switch between tabs. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, I don't know. Also, sometimes I do Spanish map, English questions, Spanish map, Spanish questions, or English map, Spanish questions, and mix and match the two. It really just depends on the level of the students and how much I think they're going to understand of the map at this point in the school year. They're all at different spots. Now they're going through the map and they're doing the activities, and while they are doing that, I just float around the room. And it's kind of nice. It's kind of a relaxed day for me, to be honest. I just kind of float around and I check in with them. I talk to them about what they're learning from the map. I ask if they have any questions. I really listen for what they're talking about, because sometimes they'll be like, oh, hey, did you hear blah, 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 or did you see blah, 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 blah. And so I can make sure that they're understanding what I want them to get from the field trip. Sometimes I hear something and you're like, wait a second, that's not what that was. And so we go back and we maybe have a quick conversation about that just to clarify understanding, especially if they're doing the map in the target language at this point. While they're working, they all tend to finish at different times, so I like to have some sort of fast finisher ready for them. For this lesson, it might be a link to a game or to a coloring activity or maybe even a puzzle for them to work on. I just like to have something ready for them when they finish because it helps with classroom management. I have a blog post with a bunch of activities that could work really well for fast finishers for this, and I will make sure to link that in the description of this video as well. There you have it, a one-day lesson plan that could work really well to talk about Dia de los Muertos with your Spanish students. It could also work really well in a Spanish club if you wanted to offer some sort of enrichment activity for your club this month. Sometimes we get a request from a parent that their student be exempted from learning about this celebration, and we always want to follow that request, even though sometimes we get the request and we're like, oh, one more thing to do. You know, that can be kind of frustrating. So I wanted to give you some ideas for things you could do in a pinch that aren't going to be a lot more work for you. So option 1 would be to just give your students a different virtual field trip. Option 2 would be to do a report on a different cultural celebration, a different holiday, a different festival, and you could just have them go to the media center and work on that alone. Option 3 could be to do a report on a famous Spanish speaker. And whichever option you choose, I have resources for all of those things that I mentioned. I will link to them below in this video, so that way you could just use it, right? If somebody emails you and says, hey, I don't want my kid to learn about this, you can say, no big deal, here's this thing. Boom, done. There you have it. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows you liked it, and if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down so YouTube knows you didn't like it. If you haven't yet, make sure you click subscribe and you ring that bell so you get notified of all new content I create for you in the future. And if this video is helpful for you, consider clicking the share button and sending it to a Spanish teacher buddy who might also find it helpful. Thanks! That really helps me. That's all I have for you today, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this lesson plan. Come on over to Instagram, send me a DM. I can't wait to hear from you. Bye!